Alrighty, chat. What kind of meat? Mun meat. How's everybody doing today? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Olu Kanoja. I'm a psychiatrist. Just a reminder, everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be for educational purposes only. Nothing's intended to be taken as medical advice. I understand we have some new people who are first-time live viewers. Welcome, everyone. Hope y'all are having... I did see Chris Rock get slapped or assaulted or punched or whatever that was. So here's a quick thought about that, okay? Just real quick. So first of all, hitting people is not okay. And at the same time, I think that having worked with a lot of people who have acted out before, let's remember that, like, is it okay? Absolutely not. And also, like, it takes a lot to push someone to do something like that, right? So I think it's important to try to maintain compassion for, like, everyone involved and try to remember that, generally speaking, unless people have, like, a history of violence behind them, that's probably a sign that someone is, like, undergoing a lot of stress. So I do my best to reserve judgment in terms of, like, you know, claiming that particular people are evil or things like that. I'm not saying that it's ever okay to punch someone. But, you know, I think it's important to remember that, like, generally speaking, when human beings, I choose to believe this, generally speaking, when human beings act out of line, like, that's usually a sign that people are struggling. Like, we definitely see that a lot, right? That if you think about your worst moments when you've behaved out of line, chances are you didn't behave out of line because everything was fantastic in your life. Chances are you're under a lot of stress. That stress kind of gets to you, and then you do something that's really out of line. So I just try to take a step back from when people behave out of line. It's like, it's not okay. And also, like, you know, there's a lot more. So I know that the internet loves to pretend that we understand exactly what's going on, right? So we like to assume that we understand what people are going through. We like to judge, whereas chances are we really have no clue what the internal experiences of these people are. And generally speaking, when people behave out of line, unless it's a pattern of behavior, then, you know, I try to reserve judgment. Moving on, indeed. So back to reality. It's funny, I actually saw some article popped up on one of my feeds about how to make the Oscars more watchable. Like, someone was commenting about, like, this is what we need to do to make the Oscars like fun to watch again. And then the next day this happens. I've never seen anything dominate all of my like social feeds as much as this event. So wow. As a woman with alopecia, wish any partner felt that angry on my behalf. That's got to be tough. Not even war. So oddly enough, like even with the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, like it's not one thing, right? It's like a lot of different things related to like a large macro event. But it's interesting. Never like one clip, like never like 30 seconds dominating all of the social feeds. Can I do a psychoanalysis of Will Smith? Absolutely not. So that is unethical. So we don't comment on anyone who we have not talked to. So happy to talk to Will Smith, but outside of that, you know, we don't do that kind of thing. So it's unethical for psychiatrists. Interestingly enough, that's okay for psychologists to do, according to the ethics guidelines for the American Psychological Association, I think, if I remember correctly. All right. So oh, is Will Smith part of Scientology? I didn't even know that. Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, let's get hydrated. I had no idea. So how was GDC? GDC was fantastic. So this is super cool. So we were on a panel, but I guess, I mean me, but like Healthy Gamer was invited to the GDC, and that was super cool. So the Game Developers Conference was this past week in San Francisco. I got to hang out with a lot of cool people. Met a lot of people from our community, by the way, which was fantastic. Like people would walk up to me on the street and be like, hey, like I remember this one guy in particular who had a magnificent smile and cool earrings. Dude, if you know who you are, had a beard. I didn't get his name, but I was just like walking down the street and he's like, hey, you're Dr. K. And I was like, yeah, man. And he's like, he was just kind of like surprised to see me on the street. It was really great. I really enjoyed meeting a lot of people from our community, got a lot of hugs, gave a lot of hugs. It was a lot of fun. It was also super cool to see how serious a lot of game developers are about like trying to make games more positive. So, you know, this actually gives me a lot of hope. So for a long time, I thought the game development industry was just full of people trying to extract money out of microtransactions and NFTs. But actually going to a game developers conference was super neat. Like I met so many people who are very, very passionate and are serious about trying to make their games like more positive and enjoyable. And when you actually like sit down and talk to the game devs, they're actually pretty amazing. So I don't get the sense that the people who are actually making the games are you know, like they seem to be like thinking about all the right things. They're thinking about how to bake more positivity, bake more like community elements into like the fundamental game structure. So I talked a lot about, or not a lot, I mean, it was like a 15-minute thing, but I talked about like different psychological tools to try to create more positive communities and things like positive reinforcement and stuff like that. Did y'all know, for example, that if you punish a child, you can alter behavior, but you won't actually develop their internal moral compass? That actually the development of internal morality comes from positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement. I mean, not punishment. It's something that, you know, I learned somewhat recently. It was really interesting. But it was super cool. So I met a bunch of cool people. I think the industry is moving hopefully in the right direction, fingers crossed, like in terms of trying to create more holistically positive experiences. I think there was a lot of appreciation for how toxic things can be. I got one really great question from a developer on a game that I won't comment on, who was sort of talking about, you know, what can they do to make their community less toxic. And it was cool. Like, I think people are thinking about it. And I think there was a lot of stuff that I think a lot of the fundamentals of behavioral change in games, people don't really like, they've missed a couple of things. So one thing that I said was, so if you think about the reporting system in a video game, there's a basic problem with reporting in video games. So if I report you, how long does it take for the punishment to take effect? Like if someone's toxic to me in a game of Dota, let's say, and I report them, when do they get punished? Right? So a few days, a week, months even. So let me ask y'all a question. Let's say I'm trying to train my dog and my dog comes and pisses in my bed. If I punish my dog a week later, how likely do you think I am to change the behavior? Right? So this is the interesting thing. So like game developers have sort of figured this out for certain things. So like how long does it take you to get your loot? Like after you down a boss, how long does it take to get the loot? And what kind of behavior do we tend to reinforce very, very strongly? Right? So like even in the temporal dimension, this is something where the reporting structures are like, they don't take advantage of this. Is if you're thinking about like especially changing negative behavior, you can't punish someone a month later. You can't punish someone like a week later. Like your brain is just not going to learn that this is the wrong thing to do. Right? In fact, what you're going to do is you're going to feel like resentful and it's going to be random because I just logged in today. I didn't do anything. And I get a ban for 3 days. Right? What it actually breeds is resentment, and you may change your behavior, but even if you do, you're not going to create a positive gamer. You're not going to create someone who's like inspired towards like making the community a better place. You're going to create someone who hopefully will, even if they learn about what they did wrong, because it's also going to be kind of unclear, right? They're going to be resentful about it. So you've created potentially, if you're lucky, you've created the right sort of behavioral intervention, but you've created a resentful member of your community who's going to be angry. Right? Yeah, plants are dying. That's why this one got moved, because I think it was not getting enough sunlight. So we'll see. And so like just some of those kinds of dimensions, I think it would be cool if like we could get more instant feedback. The other suggestion I made to the developers, by the way, I think y'all can watch the talk. I did give a talk, which was cool. It was really cool. It was me and 2 other people, and we gave a talk together. That was fantastic. The other thing that I think would be really interesting is warning players ahead of time that their behavior is being observed. So the other suggestion, so if you like look at kids, what you discover is that like if you tell them ahead of time that what they're doing is being watched in a specific instance, it actually supports the right behavior over the long term. So one of the suggestions that I was kind of making is that like, for example, in Dota 2, there's this thing called a behavior score, which depending on how much you disconnect and how toxic you are and how much you get commended, you get matched with other people of similar behavior scores. And it's fantastic. I love behavior score. Like my games are not toxic at all in Dota, which I know sounds super bizarre. Even my solo queue games are like, generally speaking, toxicity free. And so the interesting thing is that if you tell people, hey, your behavior score is going to be affected by 1,000 points based on the behavior in this next game. So you let them know ahead of time, this is a behavior score calibration game, FYI. So the interesting thing if you do that is that people will probably behave a lot better. And then what a lot of people may think is that if you have a particular time of behavior, like where your behavior score is measured, does that mean that a toxic gamer will behave well that one game and then revert back to their bad behavior the rest of the time? That's actually not true. So data actually suggests that if you put someone on notice, kind of give them ample, like you don't punish them, you let them know, hey, I'm going to observe your behavior for this amount of time. The interesting thing is that behavior, the way they behave during that one game is more likely to affect future games rather than them just acting nice that one game. It's really interesting. So there are a couple of things like that, which hopefully like as the industry, you know, I know that everyone's focused on microtransactions and all that stuff. But I think that we can use like psychology to like benefit our communities and stuff like that. And I think that's what's super cool is that like people at the Game Developers Conference, like they thought it would be cool if like they invited me, right? That's awesome. Like I'm a psychiatrist. Like I don't, you know, it's really great. Like, I think just the fact that they invited me is, I mean, I feel honored, but just the fact they invited a psychologist or psychiatrist or someone else to talk about this because they want to learn about it, right? Like, they want to do better. And so they're like seeking outside help and support. So that was fantastic. It was also super fun, super cool to see all the different kinds of like stuff that's coming out and things like that. Also super cool to like hang out with devs from different games that I've played. And like, that's neat. That's like hype. So it was really awesome, and like got to hang out with people from our community, like see random people in the line and things like that. That was great. And I also got to hang out with the Unity folks a lot, which was fantastic. They're super nice people. Yeah, so it was cool. It was really great. I'm optimistic because I think that like the main thing that I really discovered there was that, you know, the industry is full of devs trying to do a good job. They're like genuinely trying to do a good job. And it makes like, cause like sometimes you don't really see that, right? As like even a player of a game or like a spectator, as you see like these disastrous launches of games and things like that. You're like, oh, everyone's an idiot and no one cares. And it's all about the money. And it's easy to get cynical and resentful. But the truth is there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of game developers, even at studios that are notorious for being bad studios, who are genuinely trying to make good games. And that gives me hope. So, all right. Why did they create two categories? It's a good question. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, and a psychologist is usually a PhD or a PsyD. Okay. LPC is usually, I think, like licensed professional counselor. They're usually social workers by training. Yeah, so average X2 says, I have an interview in 1 hour, big if I get it. Any tips? Absolutely. So here's a tip. So while I was talking, so I gave a speech recently, right? So here's the thing. Someone asked me, someone from our community asked me afterward, they're like, you know, did you like get any formal training in like giving a speech? Like, how did you learn how to give speeches? It's a really good question. The interesting thing is I have very, very little, if no formal training. So I had about a 2-hour workshop in preparation for a talk that I gave when I graduated from residency. So that was pretty cool. But here's my advice for both interviews. Like if you want to learn how to give a good speech, it's very, very simple. So a lot of times I'll work with patients who will say like, I'm socially anxious. I have to give a presentation. Oh my God, I'm socially anxious. Or like, what if I screw up? Or I have this big interview. What if I screw up? So you go into the speech, you try to prepare for it, you practice for it, you memorize everything you're going to say, you talk in front of a mirror, all that kind of stuff. So let's think for a second, what's going on in your head when you give a speech? What are you worried about? Like what is your occupied by your mind? Okay, I have to remember all these things. I wrote 300 lines. I have to remember what comes next and what comes next, what comes next. What if I look like an idiot? Are they liking it? Are they disliking it? What if people like, what if I stutter? What if I do this? What if I do this? So where is your mind occupied? It's not occupied on the speech. It's occupied with the way that you are being judged. You're worried about judgment, right? And that is going to lead to a suboptimal delivery of a speech. So there's one really simple tip. One like simple idea that if you can sort of center in yourself before you give a speech, I think it's going to make your speeches 10 times better. Interviews too. And that is to remember that if you're giving a speech, right, even if it's for a class, so you're giving a presentation, you can't just randomly give a speech. The only time you can give a speech or a presentation is if someone asks you to do it, right? Someone has to do it, like invite you to do it. Like, so at the end of class, like even your professor, I know it sounds kind of weird, but is giving you the opportunity to like give a speech. They're giving you an opportunity to give a presentation. Even for an interview, someone is inviting you there to talk to you. So they are there to listen to you. Everyone in the room is not there to judge you. That's not actually what they're there for. The reason you are being called to give a presentation or give a speech is because they want to hear what you have to say. It may be part of a class, but still, you are being invited. So here's the main thing you need to remember. This is an opportunity for you to share and enrich the lives of everyone who's like listening to you. So if you're giving a presentation, I sort of learned this in medical school where I realized even as a medical student, so I'm giving a presentation in front of people who have 30 years more experience than I do. And at the same time, like I'm studying this stuff, I can share some piece of information that a room full of doctors can listen to that may actually help them save a life one day. Even though I'm a student, right? Like there's some tidbit that this person may not know. These people are not omniscient. And in the same way, anytime you give a presentation, you are there to enrich and explain and share information about something that you know about that other people don't know about. You can enrich the lives of other people, even your professors. So anytime you give a speech, remember that you're there for them. They're not there for you, right? Like you're the one who's giving something. It's not about judgment. It's not about grades. It's not about any of that stuff. You are there to share a piece of what you understand with the rest of the world and enrich their lives by it. That's the way you should give a speech. So this is 15 minutes where if I'm going to talk about, let's say, familial fatal insomnia or hypertensive urgency or how to be positive in video games, what I'm thinking about when I go up there is now I have 15 minutes with a room full of developers. And what I say in the next 15 minutes may equip them to build games that have more positive communities. If they have games that have more positive communities, it'll help people who are feeling suicidal have a better day. It'll help people who are bullied in the rest of their life have a safe place to go to. This is why I'm here. I'm here out of service. It's not about whether I'm good. It's not about whether they like me. It's not about whether people clap at the end. It has nothing to do with me. I am here for 15 minutes to try to enrich the lives of other people and help them do their jobs. That's why I'm here. And that's what you should base your entire speech on. So then the question becomes, what can I teach these people in 15 minutes that will help them build positive communities within video games? And in terms of an interview, this is the way you should interview. You have to understand that this company is looking for someone to do a job for them. And ideally, they're looking for someone good because the job that they have to do is very legitimate, right? Like they want to do a good job. It could be very important. Hopefully it's important. So you are there not to get the job. That's not your goal in the interview, is to land the job. Forget about whether it's good for you, if it's big for you. Forget about all that stuff. When you go into the interview, remember that you could be the savior that this company needs. Not out of arrogance, but that you have something to offer. And that this could be exactly what the company needs. So that's what you should try to do. You should go there and try to offer whatever you have. And let them decide. Don't try to convince them to hire you. Just genuinely offer whatever it is that you have to offer. Try to do it out of service, right? So say, hey, here's who I am. This is what I'm good at. This is what I can help you with. It's up to you to decide whether you want that help or not. It's up to you to decide whether I'm a good fit or not. It's not for me to convince you. This is just what I'm good at. This is what I'm bad at. This is my strengths. These are my weaknesses. Here's my experience. Here's what I'm looking for. I'm hoping that this will be a good fit. But if it's not a good fit, that's actually totally fine. Right? So what you have to do is let go of that idea of you being judged. Am I going to get the job? Am I not going to get the job? Are they going to like it? Are they not going to like it? Am I screwing up? Am I not screwing up? It's all about me, 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 me. Right? And if your mind is thinking about you when you're giving a speech, you're going to be empathically disconnected from your audience. If you're empathically disconnected from your audience, it's going to lower the quality of your speech. Oh, what do they think? What do they think? It's not about what they think. You're not there to convince them of something. You're there to offer or to try to help. And once you shift that from your ego and the way that people are perceiving you to genuinely trying to help. And if it's not helpful, it's not helpful. Like even when I gave that speech like on Friday or Saturday, I knew it could have been useless. Or sorry, on Thursday, right? Like maybe these people it's not going to benefit them. Like I have no idea. I don't know what it's like to be a game developer. So I'm going to show up. I have no idea if it's good or bad. I didn't check with anyone ahead of time. Maybe I should have, in retrospect. But all it is like, I'm going to try to do the best that I can given the task that I've been given and try to help and enrich the lives of other people. That's what you should focus on. It's going to make it beautiful in terms of like the way that you conceptualize what you're going to say. Because, okay, who is this person? What do they need to understand? What am I trying to teach them? What can I accomplish in 15 minutes? All of these questions will then like sort of come to the surface and they'll organize your speech for you. Okay? And if you have an interview, just do the same thing. Recognize that, like, take a look at your resume, take a look at your CV, look in the mirror, and recognize that you are the person who may be able to help this company immensely. It's not for them. It's not for you to decide whether it's the right job or the wrong job. It's for you to go to them and showcase who you are, right? You want to let them know what you're capable of. So you don't want to like upsell yourself or anything like that. Just be authentic. Be like, hey, here's who I am. This is what I'm good at. This is what I can do for you. Now you tell me whether that's something that y'all want or don't want. Right? And so the more that you kind of orient yourselves towards service, and this is something where you got to be careful because a lot of companies will like take advantage of that sort of thing. So that's like a little bit different. But we're talking about for an interview. I genuinely do think. So even like as an employer, like I do the same thing when I interview someone. I'll sort of think a little bit about what can I do for this person? Right? It's not just about a job. It's about like someone's growth longitudinally. Like, is this the right place for them to be? Can I do a lot to help this person? Is this the right place for them to be? Right? And the more that you think about the other person, the more you step away from your ego. The more you step away from your ego, the less you engage your default mode network. For those of you that have seen Dr. K's Guide to Depression, the neuroscience lecture, right? And the more you step away from the default mode network, the less self-critical you're going to be, the more natural you're going to feel, the better your interview will go, the better your speech will go. Make sense? Hopefully that helps. That's how you interview. That's how you give a speech. Think about them, not about you. I know it's kind of wild, but the interview is not about you, right? It's kind of weird. The speech is not about you. That's easier to understand. Okay. Sounds an awful lot like detachment. You are correct. So this is the thing about detachment. Everyone's like, oh, be detached. Question is how? How? How do we become detached? If you want to understand how to become detached, look at your mind, right? What are you thinking about? Oh my God, what are they going to think? What are they going to think? Am I going to say too much? Am I going to say too much? If you start thinking in the middle of a speech, am I saying too much? Am I going to say too much? What do you think you're going to start doing? Say and and then you panic. Oh my God, I'm saying and and then you're like, oh my God, I'm doing it again. Then you start stalling. Your flow gets disrupted. It gets worse. Then you get into a vicious cycle and then you're traumatized. Then you start to think, oh, I hate giving speeches. I'm bad at giving speeches. And once you say, I'm bad at giving speeches, what have you determined? You've determined that your identity, you've become deterministic. Now I am something. Right? I'm so bad at it, never again. You see how deterministic that is? It's not I screwed up. It's not my mind got away from me. I got distracted. I couldn't focus on the speech. I started thinking about the wrong things. That's not what you think. You say, I'm bad at giving speeches. And why is that? That's because your default mode network is activated. Your default mode network, your ability to self-reflect, a lot of your sense of identity comes out of that. And then you lose sight of the other person. Then you lose sight of empathy when you get caught up with yourself. When you lose sight of empathy and you don't understand the other person's perspective, your ability to tune into the audience gets shattered because all you're doing is tuning into yourself. And then your speech is going to come across poorly, right? Because you're not connected with your audience. It's about the audience. It's about the interviewer. Got it? Make sense? Yeah, so XC11 is saying, wow, can we use this for social situations? Yes, but there's an important caveat for social situations, okay? So in social situations, you're not actually there to serve, right? So that's important because if you're not careful, if you adopt fully the same idea as a job interview or giving a speech, you're going to be tuned into just them, which is going to make it a poor experience for you. So what I would devote yourself to in a social situation is having a good time yourself and creating a good time for other people. But you don't want to make it too lopsided. We see this problem a lot where people are like, you'll emphasize everyone else in the social situation without looking for your own entertainment. Because in a social situation, it's more even, right? You're there to have a good time and other people are there to have a good time. But I'd still do the same thing in terms of don't get caught up about, oh my God, am I having a good time? Oh my God, it's not fun here. Oh my God, these people aren't having a good time. Oh my God, like you're just thinking all up here. Which that may be somewhat true. Like, you know, there's elements of that could be true, but you don't want to get caught up in that, right? So it's just like, try to enjoy yourself. Like, what could you do? If other people are playing a game, you may think to yourself, oh, I suck at that game. I don't want to look like an idiot. So then you don't play the game. You're standing in the corner on your phone, looking at other people with envy. And then you start thinking, oh my God, I'm such a loser. They're all hanging out. And I'm just sitting here on the corner of my phone. They're going to think I'm a loser. And then the more they think you think they think you're a loser, what do you end up doing? Scrolling. Right? And then it just gets worse. So like if you feel like an idiot, you can say, hey, I've never played this game before. Does it matter if I suck? And then what are they going to say? They're not going to say, yeah, it matters if you suck. Screw you. Go to the corner and start browsing Reddit, noob. No one's ever going to say that, right? They're going to say, like, no big deal. Like, join us. Now they have low expectations for you. And then you just try to have a good time. You're there to have a good time. Right? You're not there to win. You're there to have a good time. And then, like, what are people going to think if you show up and you suck? Like, oh, look at that guy. Like, he's confident. And all the other 3 people in the corner who don't know how to play either, they're like, oh, man, I wish I could be like that guy. That guy sucks and he's playing. He's not in the corner on his phone. I wish I could be like him. Right? Y'all get it? Just tell people, like, hey, I suck at this. Can y'all teach me? Cool, right? Because, like, who's gonna, like, yeah, of course we can teach you. Absolutely, I would love to teach you. Okay, here's how this works. And then what's gonna happen if they're decent human beings? One of them is gonna be better at all the rest, and that person is gonna be on your team, and then you'll kind of break even because they're gonna carry your shitty ass. But then you still get to kind of high five, and you can say, hey, man, like, thank you so much for carrying my shitty ass. If I was a little bit better, then you could turn to your opponents. You could say, if I was a little bit better, I'd be trash talking y'all because we would have absolutely destroyed you. I suck at this, and this guy is like amazing, and we still ended up somewhat even. Right? And then then I'd be trash talking, but it's clear that I can't, even though we kind of broke even. And then you all just laugh. Right? Y'all get this? It's just, I don't know how else to say. You just, you get it? So, if you guys are curious how to do this, okay? If you're curious, because what am I doing? Right? Like, we're sort of commenting in a meta, it's hard to internalize. That's what I'm talking about. We're going to, this is why we develop, I swear to God, this is the hardest thing that we're trying to do. So we developed group coaching to help you with this stuff. The thing is, it is so hard to help people understand what group coaching is. So if we think a little bit about not getting too caught up in yourself, paying attention to what's going on in the room, reflecting or commenting about what's going on in the room, but not excessively, tuning into other people, having a shared experience with other people that you benefit from and other people benefit from. The reason we developed group coaching is because we realized that we need a sandbox for people to learn this crap and actually implement it. So group coaching has 2 levels. It's not, so we're going to formally train you in these techniques about how to interact with another human being, how to be empathic. We've got a study running right now to see if group coaching boosts EQ, which is, we're pretty sure it does. The other thing about group coaching is we're going to use these skills, though. We're going to teach it to you, and then you won't even realize how well you're learning them, because then we're going to turn it to more standard goals. I don't know what kind of job to get. I don't know. I'm struggling to find a relationship. I have trouble setting limits with my parents. I'm confused about what to do with my life. I'm stuck in a dead-end job. You take all of these problems, and then we're going to try to help you with those problems, but we're going to use a skill set which is transferable to other parts of your life. And as you boost your EQ, you're going to be able to tune into other people. You're going to be able to tune into yourself. And once you tune into yourself, then you're going to understand resistance. Oh, I should do this, but why don't I do this? You don't know, you're blind as to why you don't do something because you don't know what's your internal state. Right? So how do you learn that stuff? You have to practice this stuff. You have to work with these skills. Other people are going to reflect. They're going to notice things about you in group. You're going to notice things about other people in group. The wildest thing is that you will notice things about yourself in other people, and that's when it clicks. holy crap, this is exactly what happens to me. So why did we do group coaching? It's because of the AOE effect. This is wild. Right? Because everyone's like, okay, personal coaching, like, sure, is great and fantastic, and it tends to be full because people get a lot of value out of it. So I'm not saying it's bad in any way. But the key thing that I discovered by showing up on Twitch and YouTube and doing stuff publicly, is that you can actually learn about yourself by observing another person. But the observation that what you observe has to be authentic. It can't be like an edited blog post. It has to be an unfiltered experience of the person. And you're going to see the resistance in your colleagues when you're in group. You guys said, I remember there was I was running a group once where one person was like, my goal for the week is I'm going to cook something. We're like, okay, what are you going to cook? I'm going to make shakshuka. Then we check in next week. Did you make shakshuka? No, I didn't. And then the excuses start coming. Right? And then as you see that your bullshit meter starts going off. And then you learn how to detect the BS. You point it out to that person. Hey, man, you're BSing. What really got in the way? And then when you try to do something and the excuses start popping up in your mind, your BS meter is going to go off because now you've developed it. And then you'll see the BS and you'll be like, hey, wait a minute. What am I doing to myself? How am I shooting myself in the foot? Right? So that's why we do it. Because there's a certain amount of like getting in the ring that group coaching offers that personal coaching sort of doesn't. Like you're also in the ring. I mean, it's good because you're working with someone who's, tuned into you so that they've been formally trained in all this stuff. But if you want to learn this stuff, if you want to boost your EQ, we think personal coaching also boosts EQ. But group is like, it's fun. Like, I think consistently there's a handful of coaches, and I sort of fall into this category, where I personally prefer group work to personal work as a facilitator. So I really enjoy working with people individually. It's like really fantastic. But man, it's group fun. Like it's great. It's like solo versus multiplayer, basically. Right? And like multiplayer can sometimes just be way more fun. Yeah, so Rich NMP lol is saying that online group coaching is easier for me than real life. That's the point, right? So like the point is for like group to be an easy place for you to like learn these skills. It's like a tutorial. And then as you develop the skills, then you can like go do things in real life. Right? Okay. All right. We have like stuff to do today, chat. Okay, so a couple of other things, announcements. So I think we've gone through a lot of the topics that we wanted to cover from like posts and things like that. So we're going to be going back to interviews soon. So if y'all are interested in coming on to stream, you can go ahead and fill this out. If you guys have like something that you want to talk about or you think the community will benefit from, please check that out, okay? All right. So let's see. Yeah, so y'all can go ahead and check that out. Check out whatever, fill in the stuff. If there's something that you want to come and talk about, it sort of depends on what the community is interested in. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a couple posts to talk about today. Oh my God. Hold on. Oh no, chat. I need my notes. Hold on. I'll be right back. Chair stream. Y'all ready for chair stream? Okay. Sorry about that. Let's go. Stream is too intense, I know. Okay. You'll like the IKEA chair? Purchased secondhand, actually, if you'd believe that. All right. Let's look at a couple of posts. Oh my God. You can see a couple of books organizing my bookshelf. Okay. Let's go, chat. Okay. This is great. Dr. K, what the actual hell is passion? So hi, Dr. K, Healthy Gamer community and team. First, I'd like to say that I really enjoy this content in the digital space to be in and share my issues and problems, as I see that they are pretty common within a lot of people. It is truly virtuous. Thank you. You're most welcome, and thank you for posting. My question right now revolves around the idea that passion, your dream job, as we culturally use in the Western world at least. The idea of finding and pursuing your passion is this work subject that gives you so much motivation that makes work feeling like it isn't work, as Confucius would suggest. It is called ikigai in Japanese culture. What is your current idea around this figure? I suspect that there are a lot of myths and misconceptions around this idea, or at least this is what my experience suggests to me. We tend to form this idea as if there is an actual and only work field that is so perfect for us that would give us all the power within us to perform and succeed, like we would enter a Super Saiyan Berserk mode in an anime world and let us obliterate every obstacle we find in our way for this work. What a great description, right? My current understanding of mental health suggests that it is not a good thought process. It seems like a very hedonistic thought. Also, if you think of it logically, it doesn't make much sense either. Let's say I love basketball, which I do, and that is my real passion, and since I am in 2022, that is very convenient because basketball is pretty accessible right now. But if I had lived a century ago, I wouldn't even have had basketball. Would I have had to settle then and live life miserably? I don't think so. I ask you this because I find myself very confused right now, and I feel like I have no passion or I don't find anything sufficiently exciting to pursue. I think there are a lot of fascinating, interesting things in my field of study and other hobbies that I have, but nothing puts me in a situation of being satisfied. I'm not that interested much in basketball as a profession, and I'm investing to be a trainer focused on posture and health, and I have a lot of interest in making content around it, and even want to do gaming content, but I don't feel a drive for actually embracing it with force and determination. I'm doing it because I feel that it is my best bet right now, knowing my values and interests. I believe that you could give us a lot of insight on the topic. Thanks in advance and much appreciation. Really fantastic question. So the first thing that I'm going to comment on is the question itself. And I think the question is actually a sign of how far our community has come. So if you look at a lot of the questions, especially early on, in both our community and the rest of the internet, what people will ask is, how do I find my passion, right? So you'll have like some interview on some like Stanford business podcast or whatever, right? You'll have some like podcast in like a fancy place, like a TED Talk or something like that. And then you'll have some expert who has accomplished things with a capital A. And then the interview will ask them, like, how do you find your passion? Like, how did you discover your passion? Like, tell us about your passion. They'll be like, oh yeah, like you have to like grind 24/7, like boss babe, like, you know, whatever. They'll like, give some answer. And then we all walk away with this idea that there's this thing out there called my passion. And this is a beautiful description of it. And it's like, once you find your passion, once you find it, everything becomes easy. Work doesn't feel like work. You have so much motivation. You enter the Super Saiyan mode where you're grinding, man. It's like so like you can't stop working and like, you know, you're burning out because you're so passionate about it. And then all the obstacles fall away. So we have this idea that there's this thing out there and that passion is something to be found, right? You get an infinite buff, beautifully put. It makes all the hard things easy. And so we start seeking for this thing. And then like we find one thing that we're kind of interested in, but we don't turn into a Super Saiyan. So we're like, oh, that's not my passion. So we keep looking for my passion. Where's my passion? Where's my passion? Where's my passion? Is this my passion? Is that my passion? Oh, then what happens is someone uses this term ikigai. And then they read books on ikigai and how to find ikigai. And then they go look and they're like, oh, there's this thing. There's flow state. There's Confucius. There's ikigai. This guy in this TED talk was talking about finding your passion. And so we go looking for this mythical Super Saiyan state. And then we don't find it. And then we start asking lots of questions, right? So this is actually the right question. Let's start by defining it. Not forget about finding it. What the hell is it? What is this thing that we call passion? How does it work? What are its dimensions? What are the laws of physics that govern passion? Right? What are the equations? Is it something that's found? Is it something that's discovered? Is it something that's built? Is it a temporary state? Is it a state of mind? Is it a physiological thing? Like, what is it? Because once we understand what it is, then we can figure out constructing it or how to find it. But the first question is like, what is it? Okay? So what we're going to talk about today is a couple of different things and a couple of the different problems that we run into when we are looking for our passion, okay? So the first thing that we're going to start with, okay? So, I was about to say how to find passion, but that's incorrect. That's the default question. We actually don't want that one. We want, what is passion? Okay? So here's the first thing, is that there are three major problems that we run into when trying to answer this question or find our passion. Okay? The first is that we equate passion with a career or a job. This is mistake number one. So here's the first thing to understand. So when I start to think about my passion as a job or a career, let's think a little bit about what passion is. Let's think a little bit about being human. So over here, we have a human being. So if we want to understand passion, the first thing we have to understand about human beings is that human beings are individuals. Okay? So there are a lot of different things that make you you, right? So different people have different interests, different fulfillments. So what you find fulfilling may be different from what someone else finds fulfilling, right? And then they also have different circumstances. As this person points out, like their passion is basketball, but if they lived 200 years ago, does that mean that they just live a miserable life? Is the reason that like so many people in our community are miserable is because they were just born in the wrong era? Is that, so are you just SOL because your passion is underwater in space basket weaving? And since underwater in space basket weaving doesn't exist right now, y'all are just doomed to be unhappy? So the first thing to understand is that individuals have all of these things that make us tick. Right? So what makes me tick, what I get excited about, what I can see that people are getting caught off in that. The underwater in space basket weaving is appealing to everyone. Is that what your real passion is? Well, then make it. Pave the way for the future, for all of the people who are left out and feeling directionless in life. So passion, first of all, well, we're not going to say passion yet, but let's start by acknowledging that what makes human beings tick, what we're attracted to, what we're interested in, what we find enjoyable is going to be individualistic. Now, here's the problem, is when we look at a career or a job as a source of our passion or a way to like make our passion a reality or whatever, careers and jobs and education, that's the third big thing, right? So people will look for their passion through education. The problem is that these are institutional. What does that mean? So what's the job? What is the goal of a university that's trying to teach you how to code? It's not individual at all. In fact, it's the very opposite of individual, right? It's like cookie cutter. Here are the 15 courses you have to take first year. Here are the 15 courses you have to take second year. Here are the 15 courses you have to take third year, and then you get some choice in the fourth year. So institutions are cookie cutter. In that way, jobs and careers are cookie cutter too. Like if I go work as an analyst in an investment bank, or I work as a junior dev in a AAA game studio, or I work as a junior dev in an indie studio, like these people, like there's a job description, right? There's nothing individual about it. These are like the characteristics that we're looking for. This is what it's going to be. So the first problem that we run into is that we equate passion with job, and jobs, careers, and education tend to be institutional and cookie cutter, whereas we are individuals. So the first thing to understand is that this is a fundamental disconnect. You are not going to, I mean, you can sort of, we'll talk about how to find your passion in a job and stuff. But the first thing to understand, this is the wrong place to look, because you're never going to find your passion in a job, because a job is cookie cutter and generic, and you are not. Okay? Second problem that we run into is that we think about passion as something that is found. Right? So like, oh, find your passion. We even use the verb. Find your passion. I found my passion. For 5 years, I was spinning in the wind, and then I found my passion. I discovered hybrid taxidermy from extraterrestrial beings. And I travel to different continents and worlds, and I take different animals, and then I like stitch them together to make weird hybrid things. Right? This is my passion. And then before that, I felt like I wasn't even alive. So there's this idea that passion is found. And this is important because this implies that passion is external. Y'all get this? It's external, because if you find it, like, then it's like something you're looking, oh, I majored in this and I wasn't able to find my passion. I went to this job, I wasn't able to find my passion. I looked over here, I talked to this person. You're looking externally. Whereas, as we sort of mentioned, passion is individual in nature. So the other thing about finding passion is that it tends to be both an internal journey and an external journey. And we'll get to that a little bit more. Okay? So if you're looking for your passion, it's not going to be kind of like, you're not going to find it lying somewhere, right? Like, you're not just going to like, it's not going to be like a random drop from, you know, some kind of world quest where it's like, oh, I'm going to go here and I'm just going to walk in the door and I will see a cookie on the shelf and I will discover, oh my God, my passion is to be a baker. I had this cookie and it was so amazing that it transformed my life, right? So you can't like 0.1% passion drop. You can't check the loot table and things like that. So this is where passion is both an internal and an external journey. So like there are external things we have to look for, but I want y'all to think a little bit about, you know, passion comes from within. This is also something that we say. It's kind of true. So it's like both internal and external. And what I'm going to talk about here for a second, if you guys caught this, is we had a lecture on burnout recently. And burnout is a really, really good example of a hybrid internal-external phenomenon. So this is what we're sort of discovering. I don't know that we've even discovered it yet, but I'm seeing this for sure, is that a lot of the unhappiness that we have where the individual meets the workplace is a hybrid unhappiness. There's an internal component and an external component. So for example, we know that a discrepancy in values creates burnout in the workplace. So when the individual values one thing and the company values another thing, this is what leads to burnout. Now, what a lot of people may say is that, okay, what you should do if you're a person is just move to company number 2 that is more aligned with your values. Whereas I would say it actually goes both ways. You can also modify yourself into person number 2 that can be more aligned with company values, right? So there's an internal component to change, and whether you want to do that or not sort of depends on you. I'm not saying you should always align with company values. But for example, like if you're just a lazy ass and your company wants you to do a certain amount of productivity, it's not the worst thing in the world to like become more productive as a human being. It's not just like an endless pursuit for a company where you can automate your job, which is if you want to do that, then go for it. My point is that there's an internal change and there's an external change. Another, maybe a better example of this is control. So this is where another source of burnout is the discrepancy in control between the person and the company. So the company may control too much or it may control too little. As a human, you may need more support structures. You may need more guidelines, more structure around you. So if there's a discrepancy between control between you and your company, sometimes you have to adjust your own appreciation of control or your comfort for control, or you have to find a company that's better suited for the way that you want to be. It can be both, right? You can adjust yourself or you can adjust the external world. So when it comes to finding your passion, what we're going to talk about is actually the same thing. We're going to do both. So this is the third thing that we run into in terms of defining passion, is that there are a lot of dimensions to what I would say your passion is. So if we think about passion, it's sort of this idea that it's fulfilling, it's naturally motivating, there's an intersection between internal and external, right? So these are the qualities that we sort of think about when we think about passion. But now, as we start to get more precise, what we start to discover is that finding your passion or having a job or a career that's fulfilling involves a lot of different dimensions. And when I've worked with people who I would say have found their passion, what they've really managed to do is align a lot of these dimensions to be like congruent. So I'll give you all an example. So the first dimension I would say is spiritual. And what does that mean? That means that if you want to find your passion or define what passion is, you have to do some amount of internal work. So there's some amount of deep internal work that you have to do. And what does that mean? That means that you can't just watch YouTube videos all day and find your passion that way. I don't think that's going to work. You have to ask yourself, what is it that gets me excited about life? And you may say, your default mind is going to say, I'm not excited about anything, but that's incorrect. As a human being, I don't buy that there's nothing that excites you or nothing has ever excited you. So this is where you have to look back, okay, what did truly excite me? When did I feel fulfilled? When did work feel easy to me? So as you start to ask those questions and start to introspect, you may be surprised at what you're not considering when you ask yourself that question. So I'll give you all just a simple example. So I was working with someone who has a very famous cooking endeavor now. And so they were basically a nobody. And then through social media and these different content creation platforms, what they really realized is that they love experimental cooking. So they weren't happy about their job. They weren't even socially, they weren't really great at doing different kinds of work and stuff like that. They weren't really happy socially. They weren't happy professionally. But what they really loved doing is making complicated food for friends. And even the friends, the most social engagement that they had was when they were making complicated food. Okay? And so then what they sort of and as we were talking about it, they're okay, what really excites you? And they're well, I love hosting dinner parties, basically, right? Where I'm making cool and experimental stuff. And so, and they were but that can't be a job, right? And it's sort of well, I don't know if it can be a job, but why are you letting that restrict you? Why don't we just talk about okay, how can you do more of this? So if you do this, what would it feel like if you did it once a week? Oh, it'd be absolutely amazing. Okay, so then let's think a little bit about okay, if you wanted to do it once a week, what's getting in the way? So we started to operationalize things out. How can you monetize it? Can you do it once a week? How much does it cost? Do people need to pay for it? We started working through all those details, but it started with this deep internal work of okay, what actually satisfies me? Then what we have to think a little bit about is the neurological component. And these are sort of arbitrary things that I kind of made up. But this is where, if we look at our brains are wired in different ways. So some of us love routine. Oh, sorry. So what's kind of dopaminergic for us, right? What makes us tick? So what gets your dopamine neurons kind of going? Do you want a job that's kind of problem solving? Right? Or do you want something that's more routine? What is it that makes you your brain tick? Do you like creative work? Or do you like problem solving work? Like, do you like to create things like write a book or make music? Or are you like more about like a tinkerer, right? So like some people have like a personality or a brain that likes to tinker with stuff. Do you like to take things apart and put them back together? Is that what makes you tick? Or do you like to draw things from scratch, right? Like what kind of brain do you have? So, and this is where a lot of times people sort of recognize, oh, I like math. Well, what do you like about math? I like math because it's orderly. And I really like things that are order. I want to understand how the human brain, like how things work. So there's sort of like a neurological component about just what makes your brain tick, what gets you excited. This is a little bit different from the spiritual side about like what's fulfilling. This is like, what does your brain enjoy occupying itself with? Okay? Then we get to the physiologic. And what do I mean by physiology? So this is also sort of like a term that I'm kind of tossing out there, but if you look at different people's physiology, some people are geared towards routine, whereas some people are geared towards like being more dynamic. Okay? Some people really like working 24 hours on call. So I'll have some physicians who are hospitalists, and these people will work for 1 week and then they get 1 week off. Right? So it's 1 week on, 1 week off. I've worked with people who are like engineers on oil rigs as well. And they really like their lifestyle because they're there for 2 weeks where they like work a ton and then they like take a helicopter home and then they get to chill for like 2 weeks at a time. So what is your physiology? What is your like daily routine like? What kind of workflow do you like? Because here's the interesting thing is that even if you look at something like a standard job, if you have the wrong kind of physiological circumstance, it's not going to go well. So a good example of this is writing. So let's say that you do this and you decide, okay, writing is fulfilling to me. And then you kind of figure out, okay, I like creative work. I like to write. But then the way that you write could be drastically different. Some people want to find a cabin in the woods for a month and like bang out 100,000 words. Whereas other people are like, it has to be 4 hours a day, every day. And as you select for something like a job, if you pick the wrong physiologic routine or the wrong physiologic thing, dynamic versus routine, you could be screwing yourself by doing that, right? So if you're not sort of adapting to the body that you have, are you an early riser? Are you a late riser? How does your job work? Is it for people who are early risers? Is it work from home? Is it, freelancing? Like what's the situation there? So you should also think about this dimension. And the last thing is what I would call kind of environmental. And the key thing here is you should think a little bit about the social nature of your job. Or, what is your reporting structure? Do you like to work in a team or do you like to be freelance? Right? And so the key thing here is y'all may say, well, what does this have to do with your passion? So remember that like passion is about work that's fulfilling and naturally motivating. The key thing here is that let's say you want to be a writer. If you don't have some of this stuff aligned, you're going to have difficulty with your motivation. So if the cabin in the woods doesn't work well for you because you get super distracted and you end up procrastinating and stuff like that, you may need something like a writing group, right? You may need to work closely with an editor who keeps you on task with deadlines. So what are sort of the environmental circumstances that you need for your passion to kind of flow properly? Is it dynamic? Is it routine? Is it social? Is it team? Are you a freelancer? Like all of these dimensions matter a lot. And this is what I find people miss. Because what people sort of look at is they'll look at one of these components. Oftentimes these two are the only two that they sort of look for. And then they try to find the right job. And essentially what people will do is they'll hunt for job after job after job that aligns these things kind of naturally. And they find their dream job, which naturally aligns with like their 4 settings. Your environmental setting, your physiologic setting, your neurologic setting, your spiritual setting are all aligned. And if you find that job, then you luck out and then you found your passion and then you start going and giving TED Talks about finding your passion. And then other people listen to your TED Talk and they try to do the same thing, but it doesn't work for them because they didn't stumble into the right formula for themselves. So finding your passion is really about, first of all, understanding yourself and then thinking very, very specifically about how can I construct a situation for myself where through introspection, I figure out what is the situation I need to make in the first place, and then cultivating that over time. So passion is not binary. You don't just find it. It's cultivated over time. So I'll end with a simple example, which is myself. So any guesses what Dr. K's passion is? What do y'all think my passion is? What do I love? What's down here for me? Anyone know? People are saying Dota, WoW, teaching. Incorrect. Incorrect, incorrect, incorrect. Talking, memes, coaching, compassion, all wrong. Here's my passion. This is what I love. More than anything else, stories. Right? So you wouldn't even know it looking at me. But this is what I love more than anything else in the world, is stories. It's the reason I love fiction. It's the reason I love video games. It's the reason I became a psychiatrist. What's the tie that binds? Like, why do I love talking to people? It's because I love their stories. I love stories. That's what I love. I read bedtime stories to my kids. I read different kinds of mythology. What I love more than anything else is stories. Now, here's the tricky thing. If I love stories, you're not going to think. So early on, what I was thinking is, okay, I'll become an author, right? Or maybe I can become a game designer. Or what I ended up doing is being a psychiatrist. But these are all three different professions that are drastically different. They all have stories, right? So why do I love Elden Ring and the Souls games? Because the stories are amazing and so opaque, right? Or yeah, sure, I could become streamer. My point here is that the job is very different from what actually motivates me, right? And then you can actually develop a job that is built on your motivation. So what are the things that I sort of discovered about myself? The first is that I tend to work more if people show up. So if left to my own devices, I'm going to just start gaming. But if I have an appointment, if I make appointments from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., I can work 8 hours, easy. If someone shows up and I just talk to, if I get to help them, that's cool. I can do 8 hours of appointments, no problem. Easy. I can work 80 hours a week, no big deal. I can do 24 hours of call, as long as I'm learning about people, right? And so author was hard for me because I wasn't self-motivated enough. So I didn't have this kind of environment structure and physiologic structure was hard for me as an author. And so the key thing here is that you can, no matter what your passion is, you can construct it a lot of different ways. So don't lock yourself into an institutional approach to finding your passion. Oh, you have to major in physics, so you have to do this. Even something like psychiatry, okay, let's talk about something else, right? So this is why I'm super lucky, yo. Okay, so what do I love? So psychiatry is helping people, presumably. But I like esports. So if I love esports, am I SOL if I'm a psychiatrist? Is the only option here? People may think, okay, pro player, streamer, right? Those are my options. Well, it turns out that you can actually be a psychiatrist for an esports team, which is pretty friggin' cool. So don't restrict yourself based on jobs. Forget about the job for a second. Right? Because this is the cool thing about the world is that it's evolving very rapidly. And here's what I firmly believe, that if you want to be successful, we're not talking about success here, we're talking about fulfillment. But generally speaking, it's my belief that the world rewards value. So if you bring value to the table, you are more likely to be rewarded. Okay? Now here's the other thing. Let's just think about it logically for a second. If you care about something, if you're passionate about it, it's easier to give it 100%. And if it's easier to give it 100%, you're going to create more value. If you create more value, there's a greater likelihood that you'll be successful. And so what a lot of people will say, they'll say things like, don't make your passion your job. It'll kill it. If you're passionate about a particular thing, don't ever make it your work. And I think that's sort of a nearsighted approach because it presumes way too much. It presumes, first of all, that you have a job. It presumes that, like all kinds of things. So like a good example is like people will love piano, but if they become piano teachers or they become professional pianists, like they're not, like destroys it because there are all these other elements that you don't like about it. You love cars, but like don't necessarily want to drive Uber. Like that's totally fine. So be careful a little bit about some of this like general advice, because I think what you should do is bring value to the world. Generally speaking, you'll bring the best value to the world if you yourself are passionate about something. And then what you have to do is be very, very critical about this kind of stuff. And don't lock yourself into a job too easily. Because if your passion, what you'll really discover is that your passion is like more deep and it's not quite as crafted. It's a feeling. Right? And then depending on what your passion is, there are 1,000 different directions you can take it depending on the circumstance. So the person who's saying, I love basketball now, am I screwed, if I was born 100 years ago? I don't think so. Because I think if I had a conversation with that person, it's not like they're in love with the basketball itself. It's that there are certain qualities of basketball that they really enjoy. There are going to be qualities. So I've worked with like professional, like NBA players, for example. When you talk to them about why they love basketball, it's about mastery. It's about competition. It's about setting your mind on something and then getting better at it and better at it and better at it. It's about playing against a particular player and getting crushed. And then the next day going to game 2 and destroying that player. Right? These are the things that actually motivate them. And it just happens to be basketball. I think the manifestation can be whatever. Right? So this is where, like, if you want to find your passion, I would say break things down into these segments. What really makes me tick internally? What do I care about? What is my brain like? Right? Do I like problem solving? Do I like creative work? Like, what makes me like tick mentally? What gets me kind of excited? Like, what can I get lost in? And then that's not enough, because you can't just jump straight to a job. Then you have to start to ask yourself, like, physiologically, like, what kind of circumstance do I need? Do I want to be in commercial real estate, or like, do I want like a 9 to 5 where I like go and I have people give me a list of stuff to do and I just kind of bang it out and then I get to go home? Do I want to be like, what kind of work-life balance do I want? And then environmentally, do I want to work with people or do I want to work alone? Do I want to be a freelancer? Like, what are all the dimensions of this kind of stuff? And the more of these kinds of things that you align towards yourself, the more you're going to reduce burnout. And there's an inverse relationship between burnout and passion. Right? But the thing that burns people out is like this kind of crap. It's these two dimensions, oftentimes. It's like, oh my God, like I love writing, but I hate my editor. And so I'm going to be burnt out. And now I hate writing. And now I'm going to be one of those people who says, if you have a passion, keep it your passion and don't ever make it your job. Whereas like if you had a better editor, your whole story would be completely different. Okay? So finding your passion is like somewhat of a complicated process. And it starts with defining it, which is perfect. This is the perfect question. And as we define passion, we sort of think about it as something that's fulfilling, that feels natural. Hopefully, if you move towards it, I'm in support, by the way, of like, making your career aligned with your passion. It just requires nuance. Like people just don't do it carefully. That's why I think they struggle. And then as you think about all the dimensions that let passion flow and you construct those dimensions for yourself, then you will sort of start to enter something like Super Saiyan mode. But the thing about Super Saiyan mode is that it's fragile. People think about Super Saiyan mode as very resilient. I kind of think about Super Saiyan mode as like surfing. Where like, yeah, there's a huge wave, but you have to balance it very, very carefully to maintain that degree of awesomeness. And what it really requires, Super Saiyan mode is a flowering. It's a blooming of all of the circumstances aligning properly. And so what people don't realize, and they think like, oh, I got to be more hardcore, I got to be more hardcore. I got to be more hardcore, and then it's going to be Super Saiyan, and I'm resilient to all obstacles. It's actually kind of the opposite. If you think about your optimal function, it doesn't happen in suboptimal circumstances, right? Actually, your optimal function happens in the right circumstances. And so as you craft those circumstances for yourself, as you start to realize what really makes you tick, as you construct your life, then you will find your passion. right? And this is the thing for people who are saying like my dream career, like this is not the dream career is what you make of it, right? Like there's so many different dimensions out there. And if you think about what you actually do day to day, they can be wildly different, but you can have one, core thing. Like you can love video games. Like let's say I love video games. There are all kinds of things you can do with this, right? Sure, you could be a developer. Even then, you could go AAA. You could go indie. You can be one of these people like who makes, Axiom Verge or Undertale. Like you can just solo it. You don't even have to work for anyone. There's all kinds of like weird indie studios out there, right? Like Supergiant is a great example. But then you could also, maybe you want to be like, a writer for IGN or something like that, right? Like I'm going to just work for a company that pays me to play video games, and then I have to like write reviews for them. Or what you can do is be like a streamer, right? There's all kinds of stuff you can do if you love video games. You can even do something like you could become a physical therapist and work with a team. Because here's the thing, I love Dota, but I'm 1800 MMR, chat. There's no way I'm ever going to be a professional Dota player. It's just not going to happen. Nor does it need to. The reason that we think it needs to is because our view is too narrow. And when we start to tie in a particular career to our passion, I'm not saying you shouldn't develop a career from your passion, but we try to take this individual thing that is our passion. This is the crux of the problem. We try to take this individual thing that is our passion and we try to cram it into an institutional career. And in doing so, we screw ourselves. Like GG. But you can absolutely construct for yourself something that is fulfilling and that is aligned with who you are. That is fantastic. Right? So is someone saying, what if I love motorsport and can't be a driver? That's my point exactly, is that motorsport, if you think about all the people who do things for motorsport, are all of them drivers? No. In fact, like 1% of them are drivers or less, right? There are all the other like organizations, the tournament organizers. Maybe you can organize something. That's the other thing. So a friend of mine is also super into esports, loves esports, sucks at the game. So what are they thinking about doing? Organizing a charity tournament, right? There's so much stuff. Someone's saying review cars on YouTube. Like that's the cool thing about the world today is there is an unprecedented amount of freedom for how you make a dollar. Like 2,000 years ago, the way that dollars didn't exist back then, but the way that you secured food and shelter for yourself was like narrow. Like even my grandmother, I was talking to my grandmother the other day. She grew up in a village of like 200 people where everyone was a farmer. It's like you don't have choices. You can't do anything except for be a farmer. Only option. Now it's like even with video games, you can be a professional gamer, you can be a streamer, you can be a reviewer, you can be, just like a content creator, right? You can be a gold farmer. There is an unprecedented amount of freedom. And the problem is that we may think that that's a good thing, but it's actually a huge problem. Why is it a huge problem? Because we don't know what to do with unprecedented amounts of freedom. Because we've been raised in societies that are so damn institutional. You do 4 years of high school, then you go to university, then you get your degree, then you go to the internship, then you get your job fair. You go to the job fair, you get your job, you start as a junior analyst, then you become an analyst, then you become an associate, then you become a senior associate, then you become a vice president, and then you become a senior vice president, and then you become a director, and then you become a managing director, and then you become a partner, and then you will be happy. Board the train. Everyone's telling you to board the train, but there are no fucking train tracks anymore. It's like what we need today is ATVs, but the generation that came before us was all boarding trains. Go to college, you'll be fine. Go buy a house after 2 years of working with a bachelor's degree. The world used to be railroads and train tracks, and now it's all ATVs, baby. And we have not realized this fundamentally. And so then there we are, like looking at across the water, and we're like, wow, that water looks really great. I really love that water. Let me board this train and see where it takes me. Then we're all packing onto these trains that are going absolutely nowhere. So the ability to handle choice has become atrophied in our society. And we see this like in our dating, for example, like online dating. It's like 10,000 people out there. And has that made dating easier? No, it's made things harder. Right? It's like how many like, oh my God, like I'm so bored, there's nothing to play. Have you seen Steam? So we become paralyzed by choice because we don't know how to deal with it. Because more and more, like not only are our institutions railroaded, even fucking video games are railroaded. Right? And then every now and then we get a breath of fresh air like Elden Ring that doesn't have quest markers. And everyone's like, this game is hard. This game sucks. And like everyone loves it because that's what human beings like. I'm going to play Elden Ring the way I want to play Elden Ring. I'm going to run around naked with a club because that's what I want to do. Right? Quest markers, do this, do this, do this, do this. So if y'all are struggling, I get it, man. It's tough. Like, I don't think we appreciate how hard some of the challenges this generation faces. Human beings were not designed, we've not evolved for this many choices. You just think about the animal kingdom. We're not that different from like chimpanzees, right? Or even dolphins for that matter. Like most mammals are like pretty similar. Like, what choices does a dolphin have? Our brains have not evolved to deal with this much choice. And technology is exacerbating this problem. What do I do with my life? It's incredibly difficult to deal with. And then, like, we don't cut ourselves any slack, nor do we get empathy from or compassion from other people who don't even realize that, like, it was easy for people before. I'm not saying that there aren't things that have gotten better. There are a lot of things that have gotten better now. Right? Like what I'm saying is like this is overall, it's a net advantage. You just have to learn how to take advantage of it. Overall, it's like friggin' amazing. It's sort of like, it's like high risk, high reward. So, yeah. I ranted there for a minute. New meta. That's the best way to put it. It's absolutely a new meta. And you can't just use the old strats in the new meta. Yeah, so any chance that playing a lot of video games blinds us to our passions? Absolutely. So here's the key thing that a video game does. It does not cause you to internalize or introspect at all. So what video games do is they take your mind and they externalize it towards a particular thing and they keep it occupied over here without any effort for like a period of hours. And so there's no sense of like internal exploration with a video game. All it is like that straight dopaminergic stuff without like any of the other stuff. So I think that's part of the reason that we're getting disconnected from our passions because we don't know how to look within anymore. Right? I'm not saying they're bad. I like them too. I played Lost Ark yesterday. You know, that's okay. Probably played a little bit too much, TBH, but, you know, that's all right. $1,400? Wow. Okay. I probably played like an hour or two, somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. Maybe 3, actually, now that I think about it. 2 to 3. Yeah, 1 to 2 hours can be too much for yesterday. Right? So that's where like too much is not, I mean, there are some days where I'll play 6 hours and it won't be too much. There are some days where 2 or 3 hours is too much because I had other things that I probably should have done yesterday. So, you know, okay. Next question. All right. Man, we've got like a couple left. All right. Let's try to speed run a little bit. About the pain of learning. So basically, most, if not all, the enjoyable things to do require some form or mental effort. Whether I want to learn a new song on guitar or get into a new genre of PC games. Fighting games are so hard. Or even learning programming. All the things that intrigue me and I want to do. There is mental effort and exhaustion involved everywhere. The only things that feel good and don't need much effort are the things that I already know how to do, and they get boring. The problem is that I can't seem to fully focus more than 2 hours a day for some reason. I get brain jelly so quickly and thinking is painfully slow, to the point that I'm looking at a sentence and reading it, but not understanding it and having to read it a couple of times or forget what I wanted to say, etc. This makes day-to-day extremely frustrating. I want to learn more and progress quicker, and it feels like I am forced to stay dumb and progress at a snail's pace. Is this limited by my intelligence? What should I do the rest of the day? I mostly watch YouTube videos or do brain dead tasks because learning effort is so hard and I get really frustrated and in a bad mood from how dumb my brain seems to be. What can I do to improve my situation? Just stoically fight through it? I hate the feeling of being dumb, and it really makes me doubt myself and just gets me down and inactive. Any advice is appreciated. Brain juice is depleted. Okay. So this is a fantastic post because it's a really common problem. Sometimes we have this idea that we're supposed to be productive for a certain amount of hours per day, right? And there's so much that we get excited to do. And this is also super common where we kind of like fall into this trap of, I am bored with the things that I can do for a long time or that I already know how to do. But the exciting stuff is so damn hard that I can't do it for more than a little while. And then I'm just mentally wiped after. So it's kind of like I have to live my life choosing between exhaustion or boredom. Really classic problem. Okay, so what's going on here and what can we do about it, right? Y'all get that? It's a choice between exhaustion and boredom. So the first thing to understand is that actually 2 hours of deep work is like pretty good. So there's a video about this. Y'all can check it out on YouTube where I basically discovered sort of the same thing when I was in medical school, where essentially like I could only study for 2 hours a day. Like I had these like my friends and stuff would be like, they'd go to class and they'd go to the library. They'd like get gigantic cups of coffee and they'd like fuel. They weren't eating and drinking. They were fueling and refueling, right? Because we're medical students and we're like hardcore. I was like, I tried to do that crap, could not do it. I was like, damn, this is not working for me. So I ended up studying basically 2 hours a day during med school. That's all I could do. Couldn't do more than 2 hours. So I'd wake up first thing in the morning. By first thing in the morning, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I'd study for 2 hours. And then what I found is that I could go to class. So much like this person, you may discover that there's a range of different things that you can do that will mentally exhaust you to different levels. So a good example of this is today, for example, I can write before stream, but I can never write after stream. Just too mentally exhausted, just can't write. Feels like pulling teeth. So if I want to write, I have to do it before I stream, because after stream, I'm just wiped. So I can still go to meetings and stuff after stream, but I can't write. So you may find that there's different kinds of work, but doing mentally intensive work 2 hours a day may actually be like a decent amount. Now, there are a couple of other tricks that you can think a little bit about if you're trying to increase that amount. The first is that you have to be careful because a lot of people, what they'll do after 2 hours of intense work is they'll go to brain dead tasks. But brain dead tasks like watching YouTube or things like that don't regenerate you at all. So taking a nap or going for a walk are two things that I find to be quite regenerative. The other thing that people don't really do is like just rest. So sometimes what I'll do, I know it sounds kind of weird, I'll just go sit outside for half an hour and do nothing. I'll just like sit out there or I'll walk until I'm physically tired. And what I find is if I walk for like 40 minutes and I'm kind of like, okay, I'm done walking now, then I'll feel a little bit more refreshed. I'll relax for a little while, and then in an hour or two, I'll get kind of rejuvenated. So naps too can help, but you got to be careful because sometimes naps like make people feel groggier and stuff. So there are ways to physically regenerate that you can squeeze in more productivity. Possible. Next thing to understand is that generally speaking, your brain can acclimatize to things. So you can increase your productivity, but it just takes time. So it's going to feel like 2 hours is the most you can do now. You may be able to get to 3 hours at some point. Maybe you'll get to 4. There may be different kinds of tasks you can do, but you can increase your productivity over time. So take breaks. Remember that it's a slow skill that gets built up over time in terms of cognitive stamina. Okay? Third thing to consider is, what did I want to say? Oh yeah, so there are different kinds of work. So if you can do 2 hours of intense work, there may be other kinds of work that you can do afterward that are still productive that need to get done. So a good example is like checking your email or doing like chores or things like that, getting groceries ready, doing food prep for tomorrow. There are all kinds of other tasks you can do that are productive and will facilitate your deep work, but are still kind of shallow work. And if you don't have the energy for deep work, by all means do shallow work, okay? Issue number 3. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is a little bit different and a little bit trickier. So I'm going to tell y'all a story, okay? So I want to learn and progress quicker. So we're going to talk about this for a second. So back before I started streaming on Twitch, when I was focused on spirituality and complementing alternative medicine, so I had a patient. And the patient came to me were referred to me for a particular problem, helped him with that problem. They got better. They were sort of done. We're done with treatment. So they're super into spirituality. It's part of the reason they came to me in the first place. They wanted a psychiatrist who was like aware of meditation and stuff, right? So they come to me and they're like working on this stuff for a while. And they're one of these like hardcore spirituality people. I don't know if y'all have met these people. They're like yoga teachers, basically. Right? So they're meditation instructors. They go to retreats. They're learning this technique. They're learning that method. They, are going to go trek in the Himalayas for a month, and then they're going to go to Nepal next year. They're going to do this retreat out in Colorado. They're like hardcore about their spirituality, which is great. It's wonderful. They learn lots and lots of things, right? So still ended up with me to their great frustration. We talked about that for a while, and then I would check in with them like every 3 to 6 months or so. We'd kind of have a catch up, make sure everything's kind of going okay. And then, as we talked about their goals, like why are you, what are you doing this for? I want to learn about this, and like I want to be more in tune with myself. I want to be more connected to my inner person. I want to be more deeply spiritual. I want to be more. I want to be more. I want to be more. So I'm going to go to this retreat. I'm going to go to that retreat. I'm going to trek here. I'm going to be trek that. Because I want more. So one day I was asking this person, I'm like, what do you think about that? Right? You're doing all this like spirituality. You're hungry. And no matter how much you eat, you never get filled. So you go to this retreat, you get more hardcore, and then you're going to go to the Himalayas. You did a month last time, and you're still unsatisfied. So next year, you're going to go for 2 months. Right? So some of y'all are saying spiritual ego, but it's not ego yet. This person wasn't egotistical in that way. It's a lack of recognition that what you're looking for, you're still looking externally to fill a void within. You're just looking externally in a spiritual way, right? So instead of chasing cars and buying this fancy purse and getting a Rolex to fill the void in here, you're going to this retreat, you're going to that retreat, you're going to go study with this guru, you're going to go study with that guru, you're going to go do this and you're going to go do that. Like, when does it end? When will you be spiritually satisfied? How many retreats does it take to be content with yourself? The answer is 0. Not a single one, because you're never going to find it from that retreat, right? So this is the other thing to understand if you are unsatisfied with 2 hours a day. There are 2 things you can work on. One is, sure, you can optimize and maybe work 3. But if you want to be content, 2 things can happen, right? So I want y'all to appreciate this for a moment. This person is uncontent with 2 hours of productivity. So maybe 3 hours will make you content. Maybe 4 hours will make you content. Maybe 5 hours will make you content. Maybe that won't be enough. Maybe what you need to be content is not to be more productive. This is wild. Maybe what you need to do to be content is let yourself slow down. Why do you want to learn more? Why do you need to progress quicker? This makes day-to-day extremely frustrating. Forced to stay dumb, progress at a snail's pace, limited by intelligence, I hate the feeling of being dumb. Really makes me doubt myself and get down and inactive. So here's another wild thing. Maybe this is what's going on. You study for 2 hours. You work for 2 hours. It starts to slow down. What is it? There's something about I get brain jelly. I'm looking at a sentence and reading it. And then how do you feel about yourself when you don't understand it? You feel like an idiot. Maybe I'm an idiot. What can I do? I'm so dumb. I'm so frustrated. What do you think that feeling of being stupid and that frustration does to your brain? Does that regenerate your mana? Does that allow you to study or be more productive? Of course not. And then YouTube opens its arms and says, come to me, my love. I'm here for you. You who cannot work right now and are beating yourself up, I open my arms. Come. Let me wipe away your sorrows. Let me wipe away your frustrations. Come. Let me show you this Key and Peele skit, and it will let you forget for a moment. And then this Jordan Peterson video. And oh, by the way, did you hear about Will Smith slapping this person? Let me show you something about this. And then watch someone react to Will Smith slapping someone. Don't worry about all of those terrible things. Come to me, my darling. I'm here for you. 24 hours a day. I have videos that you can watch until the day you die, and you'll never get through 5% of them. All of your lack of productivity, all of your frustration with yourself, whatever you have, I'll wipe it away for you. I'm here for you, darling. Come. Come home to me. I miss you. I'm here for you. Right? So, be careful about the internal component of productivity. Be careful about why are you dissatisfied with 2 hours? Why do you feel stupid in the first place? This looks like a samskara to me. How long have you felt stupid? How long have you been extremely frustrated with yourself? What are you frustrated by? Why do you need to progress quicker? What are you missing out on? These are the kinds of things that you need to get through. Stoically fight through it. No, you're screwed if you stoically fight through it. Stoically fighting through it is how you get burnt out, by the way, because you're going to be ignoring these parts of yourself. So by all means, be more productive. By all means, acknowledge for a moment that like learning is difficulty, right? And you're stuck between this issue of like boredom or exhaustion. And it's not just exhaustion, right? Because it's exhaustion and feeling like an idiot. Right? Frustrated in a bad mood from how dumb my brain is. That's what you're fighting against. So it's tricky. It's absolutely tricky. So somewhere along the way, you started to develop this opinion of yourself that you need to be faster, better, stronger, right? That's what you want to be. And when you're not able to do that, you're really frustrated with yourself. Chances are you learned that from someone else, by the way, right? So someone else may have been frustrated with, or maybe comparing you a lot to an older sibling. I'm just shooting in the dark here. I have no idea if any of this applies to this person. Like, oh, like, you know, your sibling got an A+ and you're getting a B+. Like, you're kind of the scuffed version, right? So version 1.0 actually came out 2 years before you did. And now we're scuffed and you're back into alpha, unlike your older sibling. It's like reverse, you know? And so then you feel dumb. You feel like an idiot. And then that makes it harder for you to be productive. So all these things you need to look into. So if you're unsatisfied with your productivity, you can improve your productivity or you can improve your dissatisfaction. And this is what's tricky is that everyone is terrified. So how do you know if you need to improve your dissatisfaction with your productivity? If I tell you that there are 2 options to fixing productivity, or content with productivity. One is you can be more productive. The other was you can be less dissatisfied with productivity. If the idea of being less dissatisfied with productivity terrifies you, if you're like, no, I don't want that, then I'm going to be content and I'll amount to nothing in life. My dissatisfaction is my only source of energy to do things. If you are terrified of accepting yourself for being a little bit less productive, then you need to learn how to be less dissatisfied with productivity. Okay? If you're terrified, you're like, no, then I won't do anything. Very, 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 very Understandable feeling. Incredibly common. Without ambition and dissatisfaction, without me flagellating myself with insufficiency and incompetence, I'm never going to amount to anything. And that's why we do it. Because it is our dissatisfaction with ourselves. Why do you think that the brain is like this? Look at this. Why do you think we have this? You know why we have this? Because it's productive. Right? Think about how much your insecurity causes you to overcompensate and try extra hard. So be careful. It's Is it terrifying? Absolutely. Is it necessary? Absolutely. Are you going to fall apart if you start to be a little bit more compassionate towards yourself and accept for a moment that you can wow, maybe reaching the end of stream here. Are you going to fall apart into nothing if you stop beating yourself up? I don't think so. You'll be amazed at what a compassionate version of yourself is capable of. Right? Because then you're going to be aligned. So like, I think self-flagellation as motivation is kind of like using caffeine as a substitute for sleep. It kind of works, but only for so long, and you'll never get to optimal function that way. Right? It's a short-term strategy that can sometimes work. The problem is that we become dependent on it, and then it's like, there's no substitute for sleep. So it's Infernal Fate is saying, you've changed my life, Dr. K. I went from a 2.0 GPA to a 1.0 GPA. Thank you very much. You're very welcome, my friend. All right. I want to teach meditation, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get through it. And I wanted to do one more post too. There's another really good one. But I think my voice may be giving out, chat. Ah, yes. Someone saying 1.0 still passes. Rock and Roll is asking, do I actually care about helping people? Is it my passion or is it ego and my own personal issue? It's all of the above, my friend. So remember, one key thing I learned from medicine, things are multifactorial, okay? It's not either or, it's all of the above. So do you care about helping people? I think you do. Does it do something for your ego? Absolutely. So it can do both of those things for some time. You don't have to fix everything right away. If you're helping someone, I'd say keep on helping people. Be aware, pay attention, see what it does to your mind. Pay attention. You'll get there. Along the way, you're helping people. So it's like, that's fantastic. You're making the world a better place. Okay. Who are we rating? What if you get passionate about everything you do? I don't know if you're lucky or unlucky then. So a lot of people may say, unlucky. Okay, you want to raid Tyler? Melina? Hassan? Okay, we can raid Tyler. Who's a Twitch streamer who exemplifies living their passion? We'll raid Tyler one. All right, so regular stream this week, I'm going to really try to rest my voice because I want to teach meditation. I've got a good meditation for y'all. Who was around for the Kaya Sthira meditation? Did y'all like that one? Got some other good stuff coming. So we'll see y'all on Wednesday, okay? And then check out the Healthy Gamer /contact, healthygamer.gg/contact if y'all want to come on stream. And we'll probably be picking up interviews soon, okay? Take care, y'all. No, is it raiding? No? Raid Tyler 1. Raid command is bugged? Raid command is scuffed, chat? Oh, it's lol Tyler 1. Thank you. There we go. Thank you, chat. So for those of you, thank you so much for taking care of me, y'all. I really appreciate it. Helping me navigate this world that is Twitch. Have a good day. We'll see y'all on Wednesday, okay?